How's it going, everybody? Coach TK here at Genesis Barbell, a powerlifting and strength facility in Cape Town. And welcome to the very first video where I will be explaining the mind behind a program that I wrote for one of my clients, Tariq. So he's been an athlete of mine for quite some time now, and we're learning what is working well for his body. So you're going to be looking at the methods that I use for him specifically and how I customize training for his needs. So he's currently doing a strength block, and I'm basically going to give a rundown of what that looks like for him. So tune in and enjoy. All right, so we've got Tariq's strength block right in front of us over here, and I'm going to dive straight into what this is looking like. So just to orientate yourself, we've got all of our exercises over here with each training day. Okay, Tariq has currently got 5 training days in a week. Okay, so these are all the exercises. Then we've got the set scheme, the rep scheme, the percentages, and the RPEs. Okay, then we've got rest time if it's applicable. We've got different specifications of each exercise. We've got a tempo if necessary, and then just some personal notes for him to understand what he's doing. All right, so we're going to start off with deadlifts. Okay, we're going to take each lift separately with their accessories. Okay, and then we'll kind of have a look at the whole picture. So first off, let's start with the deadlift, since this is day 1 for him. His primary deadlift day. Okay, so we're starting off with a top triple with a given RPE. Okay, very standard way to start off a strength block. Okay, so for Tariq, he is successively progressing his triples every week. Okay, until he gets to a final week before deload where he ends off with a big triple at an RPE 8.5. Okay, not pushing the intensity too high. Okay, because we're not far in prep. This is his first strength block, so we're just doing very general progression from his first week onwards. Okay, why the rep scheme? 3 reps. Okay, it's just a very standard correlation between the absolute load and how much he's using that for. Okay, kind of skill practice, how many reps he's doing that for. A top triple is very standard. Okay, so a good balance between the absolute load and the intensity. Okay, so top triple that is progressing each week. Okay, I gave him an RPE for his top set. Why? So the RPE is given because for Tariq specifically, he had a little bit of a niggle in his lower back recently. So I want to take that into account when giving his top set. Okay, so instead of giving him a standard percentage to work off of, I'm giving him an RPE, okay, just so that he can feel what training is going to be like on the day. Okay, it's going to be based on how he feels on the day. So I'm giving him an RPE for that reason. Then he's got 2 back down sets of 5 reps. Okay, 5 reps, just general skill practice with a decent amount of load. Okay, this rep scheme is going to go down slightly with each week, ending off with back down triples. Okay, and so the rep scheme comes down, the absolute load goes up slightly. Okay, so very, very standard method over there. And the back down sets, I'm prescribing 90.5% of this top set. Why do I use this method? Well, instead of, again, giving him percentages, okay, I don't want to give him a fixed number that he feels he needs to subscribe to on the day, just because it really depends on how he feels and how his back is feeling. Okay, so I don't give him a specific percentage, but I also don't give him an RPE. Okay, the reason why is we don't need an RPE for each set. We just need it for the top set, and then that would basically tell him how he's feeling on that day. So he's got an RPE for his top set, and whatever weight he uses for that set, he can base that off. He can use that for his back down sets. Okay, so 90.5% of the weight that he used for his top set, he's now going to use for sets of 5 for his back downs. Okay, why do I use 2 sets of 5? Why not 3? Why not 4? Okay, so I've got a very general way of working out volume, and for Tariq specifically, more than 3 sets on his primary deadlift day in a strength block will probably be a little bit too much. Okay, so for Tariq, 3 total sets on his standard competition deadlift is going to be more than enough. Okay, so that's his primary deadlifts and how it progresses from week to week. We're ending off with a top triple at an 8.5 RPE with 2 back down triples at 97% of his top set. Now let's have a look at his secondary deadlifts in this week. Okay, so that will be on his primary squat day. Okay, day 5. Before we get into that, why am I giving him his secondary deadlifts on his primary squat day? Well, I don't want to give him his secondary deadlifts on a different day because he might not recover his hips, his low back, whatever between sessions. So if he had 3 lower body specific sessions in a week, he just wouldn't recover. So instead of separating, okay, we put general squat training and general deadlift training somewhat together because he's deadlifting twice a week and he's squatting twice a week. We don't want 4 separate days where we are targeting anything surrounding the lower body because there will just be interference in terms of fatigue. So that's why I tend to group them together. So on his primary squat day, which we'll get to in a moment, he's got his secondary deadlifts after his primary squats. So those deadlifts are deficit stiff-legged deadlifts. Why am I giving him this? Okay, the reason I'm giving him this one is because his previous block, he did some beltless deficit stiff-legged deadlifts. Okay, he's got a very stiff-legged position in general, okay, for his competition deadlift, and so we want to build on that strength. Okay, if that is his strongest position, we want to emphasize that and we want to build that. Okay, so after his beltless deficit stiff-legged deadlifts, now we are progressing that from block to block, and now I've just taken away the beltless aspect and he's doing these belted. Okay, with this progression he will be adding weight, pushing high intensity, and making progression in that regard. So progression is not only within a block but also from block to block, and we want to translate those progressions between blocks and see how we can get more and more specific towards the end of his total prep. Okay, so in this case we've taken away the beltless aspect. Now he's throwing on a belt and he's doing his deficit stiff-legged deadlifts, really pushing that posterior chain with a lot of emphasis on the hip hinge with this deficit. All right, so he's got a top set of 5 reps. Okay, a little bit higher rep range than his primary deadlifts. My bad, this is week 5. Let's take it to week 1. Okay, so top set of 7. Okay, for his week 1, ending off in week 5 with a top set of 5 reps. So you see there again a slight drop in his rep range from 7 all the way to 5. Okay, so a little bit higher general rep range for the entirety of this block than his competition deadlift, just because of the lack of specificity. So we want to induce some more hypertrophic stimulus as well with this, but also with a higher rep range comes less absolute load on the bar. Okay, because this is his secondary day, we don't really want to push the weight too much. Okay, and so we increase the rep range slightly just to lower that absolute load on the bar and make way for some fatigue mitigation. Okay, so we don't want to get too fatigued. Two deadlift sessions in a week is quite a bit in general, so we want to make sure that we recover fine from session to session for his deadlifts. Okay, so we've got a top set of 7, again RPE prescribed for the sake of his back, just to make sure that everything is fine and he's doing what he can do on that day. Okay, just because an RPE is given doesn't mean we don't encourage increases in load from week to week. Okay, so he still wants to push from week to week, but the RPE is there just in case things don't go completely as planned. We want to make sure we stay safe first and foremost. Okay, then he's just got his 3 to 5 centimeter deficit over here. Okay, so top set of 7, and then just a couple back down sets of 7 as well. 2 sets of 7, again, nothing more than 3 sets per day for his deadlifts. It'll just be a little bit too much for him to recover from. So 6 total sets of deadlifts in a week. That is his volume landmark for the strength block. his 2 back down sets of 7. Again, percentage of the top set. We don't need another RPE scheme. We've got one for the top set, and that's all we need to determine how much he should be doing for his back down sets. Okay, so that's his deadlifts. Now let's look a little bit at the accessories for the deadlift. Okay, so general accessories for his deadlift. Okay, we've got the glute ham raise and safety bar good morning, okay, which I'm going to go into now. Before we do that, okay, his his secondary squat training in a week has got some carryover to the deadlift as well, okay, because it's a safety bar box squat. I'm going to explain all of that. This is quite some stimulus for his posterior chain as well, so we need to make sure that we understand that there is some carryover here. So there's not a lot of accessory work for his deadlift, just because we need to consider this as well. So we've only got 3 sets for each of these exercises that are going to be his primary deadlift accessories. So it's a glute ham raise, obviously for the hamstrings at the knee joint, okay, and then some safety bar good mornings. Okay, so why do I give him this? Glute ham raise, of course, is just some hamstring specific isolated stimulus. Okay, I gave him that for 3 sets just with an RPE, because obviously he's going to be using his body weight. So I can't give him really a rep range because it completely depends on what he can do with his body weight. Okay, so that's going to be the glute ham raises. Now I've supersetted this with the safety bar good mornings. Why? Well, the glute ham raise acts as a pre-fatigue method. So when he goes and does his safety bar good mornings, his hamstrings are already well stimulated, and so that's going to be the limiting factor in this good morning. So we do love a hip hinge for the hamstrings, but if we just go straight into a hip hinge dominant movement like an RDL or good morning, chances are our lower back is going to fatigue before our hamstrings or glutes do. Okay, so that might be the limiting factor, but now we've pre-fatigued the hamstrings with the glute ham raise. We go straight into the safety bar good mornings, and with that we know that the hamstrings are most likely going to be our limiting factor for this lift, which is what we want. It's what's going to be helping him to induce the most stimulus for his hamstrings. Okay, so that's going to be our little combination of an accessory here. So again, the 3 sets, a good standard amount for him to induce some good stimulus. On that, 4 sets might be a little bit too much for him to recover from doing it every single week and progressing it every single week, especially since we've made the intensity quite high. Okay, so you see here at the RPEs, again, we can't really give a percentage for these accessories just because it's very, very unrealistic. We don't know what a 1 rep max glute ham raise is, and we don't know what safety bar good morning 1 rep max is, so we can't really give a percentage. Okay, so we just give a standard RPE range, and then he progresses that from week to week, ending off on week 5 with an RPE 10 on glute ham raise, just because it's less fatiguing than a safety bar good morning, which you will end with an RPE 9. Okay, just to make sure we don't get too overly fatigued, especially because we've still got another lower body session later that week. All right, so that is accessories for his deadlift training. Now let's look a little bit at his squat training. So moving on to squats, okay, we're going to take it down to day 5, okay, and this is where his primary squats are taking place. So with the squat, again, we've got 1 top triple, okay, for his top set. Again, very standard. There's nothing really particular that we want to change for his top sets in this block, okay. His training has been very standard in terms of top set progressions. We just have no reason to deviate from that. So this might be a very simple top set strategy, but it's simple because this is what's been working for him and he doesn't need to change that. So basically we've got a top triple, and then he's ending off on week 5 the top triple at 87.8%. If you see some funny numbers for percentages, this is the table where I get all my percentages from. It's just a correlation between RPE, the reps that you're doing, and the percentage that is given in terms of those. Okay, So you can find this online. I found it through PR's Performance, and it's it's a very good tool to use when you are trying to figure out what to prescribe someone with the relation between percentage and RPE. Okay, so that's what I use for all of my programming. So we've got our top triple that we're ending off on quite a high percentage. Okay, this percentage here, if we want to go and have a look, 87.8%. Okay, so with the triple here, 87.8% would leave him roughly, should be around 8.5 RPE. Okay, and so that is the goal, an 8.5 RPE for his last triple. If it's a 9, that's fine. If it's an 8, great. Okay, but that is the goal. All right. So we don't want to push too big of a triple like RP 9.510, okay, because again, we are still in prep. This is his first strength block. We don't want to push it too far all the way at the start, okay? So let's take it back to week 1. Top triple, and again, same thing with the deadlift. We're doing a triple every single week and increasing the load, okay? That's just general force production method. We don't need to be manipulating rep ranges for any reason. Okay, the point is increased load on the bar. Okay, then we've got 2 back down sets of 5 at a particular percentage. Okay, this is just a percentage related to the rep range, plus also taking into consideration fatigue that comes from the first top set. Okay, so that's also quite a funny number, but again, all of my percentages come from here. All right. Okay, again, 2 back down sets of 5, general skill practice. We just want to get the reps in under significant load, and we are building up to 2 back down triples at the very end of his block before his deload. Okay, so very, very standard. Again, we've got 3 total competition squat sets on his primary day. Yes, it's the same as deadlifts. Typically, I give higher volume on squats than deadlifts. Okay, the reason I only gave him 3 sets here is because there's quite a bit of volume on his secondary squat day. Okay, plus he's got quite a ton of volume on his accessory work, which we'll get to in a moment. So we don't want to push too much on the primary squats. Okay, so next up we've got a hack squat. Okay, so for Tariq specifically, we want to build the quads. Okay, he is a mass monster on his upper body, and he's got some pretty big quads, pretty big hamstrings, but for the sake of his lifts, we want to bias the lower body currently. Okay, we don't want to put on any more muscle on his upper body. He is fully loaded on that end, so we're going to be biasing some growth in his legs. Okay, so for that reason, we're giving him a very quad dominant accessory that's still very, very high specificity for the squat, okay, the hack squat. Okay, what's nice about this is with the amount of deadlift training that he is doing in this week, okay, the hack squat simply takes away load on the spine and directly stimulates the quads, okay. You can load this pretty heavy, so that is what makes it quite specific to the squat, and it's obviously the squat motion involving a hip hinge as well. Okay, so for him, I told him full range of motion, nothing less. And if you know me and my programming, that is how I like to do it. All accessories are with full range of motion. I won't tell you in your notes full range of motion everywhere, but for the sake of this specific accessory, we don't want to get away with anything but full range. So that's why I gave it to him there. And for this, I'm giving him a monster set. You'll see a lot of my accessory training is with monster sets. I do love the concept of a monster set. Basically, it's very similar to a rest pause set. I give a client a total amount of reps, and they have to complete those reps with as many sets as it takes, given the rest time. Okay, so I basically say 1 set of 10 to 15 here. What that basically means is he's going to do his first set for 10 to 15 reps, depending on the RPE and the weight he's used. So say he's got 4 plates aside. Okay, that's what he used to get to an RPE 8 within this rep range. Okay, say he gets 12 reps. Okay, that's good. It's within the range. Now he's got 12 reps and he needs to get to 60. This is total rep scheme over here, 60 reps. Okay, and he's got 2 minutes between sets. So he's done his first set at 12 reps. Now he waits 2 minutes. He goes back into it. He does as many reps as he can given the RPE, and then he stops. Then he rests 2 minutes again. And then he keeps going like that, set after set after set, until we get to 60 reps. And that is going to be the total amount of reps, the total amount of volume that he gets done for his hack squats. Now, I'm not going to explain why I use monster sets in this video, but in a future video I will. But that is what he is going to be doing for his hack squats. Okay, some good stimulus on the quads for growth and force production that's going to help him with his squat. All right, then just a separate note, I threw in a zero acceleration here as well. So what this basically means is it's not going to gain any momentum on the way down before he starts his concentric. So it's going to be a controlled descent. It's going to be a very slight pause at the bottom and then explode up for his concentric. So what this basically does, it takes away any momentum that we gain throughout the lift. We purely just want stimulus for the quads. Okay, we don't want any momentum. We don't want any other assistance to just get the weight up. We just want our quads to work as hard as possible. And so zero acceleration training is fantastic for that. Okay, so that is going to be his main squats for his primary squat day. Now let's go have a look at day one again, where he does his secondary squats. Okay, again, we're grouping together lower body specific movements. So he's got his secondary squats, safety bar, box squats. All right, why did I give him a safety bar box squat? Well, Tariq has got a pretty wide stance in the squat. He squats high bar, but he sits his hips back. So in that position, he is utilizing a lot of his posterior chain, okay, with a wide stance, with the hectic hip hinge, and with a high bar position. He needs a strong posterior chain to get his squats done. So the reason I gave him a safety bar squat, it's a little bit of a progression from good mornings that he did in his previous block. Okay, so I gave him this one, and if you look at, you'll have to visualize it slightly. Okay, but if you think about doing a box squat, okay, obviously this box squat is absolutely at depth and not above. Okay, I do not like box squats above depth. Okay, we're not training shortened range of motions here. We want full ROM. Okay. Anyway, for the sake of specificity for the squat, we just have it at depth, but nothing high. All right. So if you visualize a safety bar box squat, okay, obviously we know that the safety bar is firstly going to take some strain away from his arms, but also with a higher placement, with the weight slightly shifted forward, it's going to be a lot of stress on the thoracic spine. Okay, this is just going to help him with tightness and stability in his upper body throughout the squat, which is definitely going to be necessary given the amount of hinge that he gets in his squat. Okay, so that's the reason for the safety bar. But if you visualize the box squat itself, right, when you do a box squat, when you sit down, you kind of shift your weight back, right? You don't just go sit straight down. You sit, relieve tension by leaning a little bit back, and then you come forward again before you initiate the squat. Okay, so when thinking about that motion, okay, we do the box squat, we go down, we sit back a little bit, and then we come forward before we start the concentric. So when we come forward and we drive, in that position, we are slightly more hinged, slightly more length forward, slightly more in a good morning position when we initiate the squat, right? So what that does is an instantaneous stimulus for the back, for the glutes, for the hamstrings, the entire posterior chain to work just slightly a little bit harder as we initiate the squat. So we want that instantaneous kind of load on the posterior chain for him to fight his way back upright. Okay, and so we give this specifically because he's got so much of a hinge and so much of a length forward position in his general squat training or in his competition squat, okay, that we want to make sure that when he's in the hole with a 1 rep max squat, okay, that he has the power to come back upright as he comes back up on the squat. Okay, so this is the reason for the safety bar box squat, is so that when he sits down, relaxes, and comes back forward as he initiates the box squat, okay, it gets that hectic pressure and stimulus on the posterior chain, on that hinge, okay, for him to come and stand up straight again. Okay, compare this to a lifter with shorter femurs that squats very upright. Okay, he doesn't need that kind of posterior stimulus for his squat just because it's not the type of squatting that he does. But for Tariq, this is going to be necessary for him to build not just the strength and the general force production, but to give him that neuromuscular pathway for his brain to send signals to his motor units to work in a way for him to be upright when he initiates squat out the hole. Okay, so long story short, we've got safety bar box squats for a top set of 6, general percentage. Okay, so general percentage based on the RPE that we want. Again, this little table. Okay, and then we got 3 back downs, so quite a little bit of volume here, right? More than his primary squat day. Okay, at least in terms of high specificity variations. Okay, so he's got 3 back downs, and for his back downs, I gave him an RPE and no rep scheme. Okay, so this is another completely different way in which you can do it. Okay, but I kept the percentage exactly the same with an RPE. Okay, why did I do this? Why did I not give him a rep range? Well, the rep range isn't important here, at least not as important as the load on the bar. Because of the reason for giving him this SSB box squat, we want him to handle significant load. Okay, that's going to be what's going to cause the stimulus that we want. Okay, so we want the load to stay the same. Even with increasing fatigue from set to set during his back downs, we want the load the same. So given that, we know that the reps will decrease from set to set, most likely, or at least the same amount of reps will become harder. But that's fine because the rep scheme isn't the most important thing here. It's not skill practice. We don't want a particular amount of reps because this is not a skill that we specifically want to learn. Okay, this is not a competition squat where we need that. We basically just want the stimulus from the heavy load in that position coming out of the box in the hole. Okay, RPE is just there to gauge his intensity and make sure he doesn't go overboard with too much fatigue. So instead of giving him reps and an RPE or reps and a percentage, I'm giving him a percentage to keep that absolute load and an RPE to kind of keep the intensity at bay, and then however many reps he gets, that's fine as long as he progresses from week to week. Okay, so as you can see, the percentage increases every week, and we're ending off with sets of 4 reps or top set of 4 reps. And his back down sets with a high RPE with the same absolute load. Okay. Then the only other accessory that he's got for his squat is some belt squats. And again, monster set kind of scheme with 2-minute break between sets at an RPE 8, which is quite a high RPE to start with, but it's just because belt squat, it's just not very fatiguing. Okay, very good stimulus for the quads, but just not very fatiguing. And the only reason I gave him this accessory is just for extra stimulus for hypertrophic gains for his quads. Okay, no other reason at all. Okay, luckily the belt squat, no load on the back, very, very quad specific. So fantastic way that we can just add some stimulus for the quads to grow. Okay, so that's the entirety of day 1. Okay, which is not nothing. It's quite a bit. And then you'll see here the only other accessories to kind of take note of, just some standard accessories for his adductors and for his kind of QL, glute medius, etc. So we've got some Copenhagen planks. So there's a little bit of a variation of the Copenhagen plank. I'm not going to get into that, but just know it's for the adductors. All right. Okay, and then just 3 sets of that, that's more than enough. And then some side planks, 3 sets of that, also more than enough. Working on a little bit of the frontal plane. Okay, we don't just want to do everything in the sagittal plane, we want to do in the frontal plane as well. So kind of side to side movements and lifts, if I can put it in layman's terms. So lots of glute medius from the side plank and QL for the side plank, and the Copenhagen, just some adductors. I'm a very big believer in strong adductors simply because they are anatomically bigger than the hamstrings, and we know how important the hamstrings are. So adductors are exceptionally important for any type of hip extension as well. and stability, of course. But yeah, so that's going to be just some couple very accessories there for the lower body, just for good measure. Then we will move on to the bench press. All right, so the bench press, okay, for him, he's got 2 big bench days with a third day being very, very low specificity. All right, so for Tariq, I find that 3 heavy bench days in a week might be a little bit too much for him. And especially in this case, his 2 heavy bench days are very, very, very specific, meaning it's going to be lots of high loads. So we really wanted to make sure that his third kind of tertiary bench day was very low specificity and much more like stimulating on the muscle tissue than causing any sort of crazy fatigue in the joints, etc. Okay, so we really wanted to make sure that tertiary day is nothing crazy, but he's got 3 bench days, okay, or 3 pressing days for the upper body. Okay, we're going to get to the primary day first. Okay, so his primary day, absolutely stock standard. Okay, a top set of 6 in week 1 with a given percentage, with 4 back down sets of 6 at a lower percentage, given the fatigue that comes into play. And he basically just progresses that all the way to week 5, lowering the rep range all the way up until a top set of 4 at a given percentage, with 4 back down sets of 4 at a given percentage. Okay, stock standard way of setting up a basic program. His bench has been improving well, and there's no need to change that. Okay, so that's his primary day, just some basic skill practice under heavy load for him to get stronger over time. Right. So then we've got our secondary day. Now this one could be seen as a primary day. I don't like to see it like that just because there are some other schemes and stuff coming into play here. But it's a top double, okay, which he will progress each week up until his last week, okay, where he's doing a top double at 90.7%, which is quite high. So why do I do this? Why a double and not a triple? And why such a high percentage compared to the squat? Well, the bench is less systemically fatiguing than the other 2 lifts, meaning we can do more weight on the bar. And so I've done that through having a double instead of a triple, which means more weight on the bar, and obviously a higher percentage. So this, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is an RPE 9 for his last week. Okay, so a little bit higher intensity, a little bit higher RPE than the other 2 lifts at the end of this block, simply because we don't have as much fatigue doing a heavier bench, okay, than the other 2 lifts. So we've got a top double, which is increasing every week, and then 1 back down set of 7. Okay, I like this method for the bench specifically. This is just anecdotal experience, where in the bench specifically, I feel that doing like a top single, top double, top triple, or whatever sets you up to handle a kind of higher rep set better. Okay, so this is completely anecdotal for me. This isn't objective, and I'm trialing it with Tariq. I'm trialing it, so I'm seeing if this is a nice way for him to push his reps on his back down sets, and I'm going to have a look and see how smoothly that takes place. Okay, so given the heavy top set, we're going to drop the weight quite a bit and push those reps, and we're going to try and make that as easy as possible. Okay, again, just some skill practice. Okay, the thing with Tariq is he's massive in the upper body. He doesn't really need any muscle there, and he's got some significant strength there as well, benching over 200 kilos. And so for him, there's a lot of skill practice for the bench because there's nothing really else to work on. We basically just want to take the size and the strength that he's got and put it through a very, very consistent movement pattern and just get better through that kind of skill practice. Okay, then he's got some close grip bench sets of 7, a little bit higher rep range. Again, we just want to get some skill practice and some good stimulus for the shoulders. Okay, so if there's anything that I can possibly see lacking in Tariq's bench, which really isn't significant at all, is his shoulder strength. So he's got quite a wide grip. His pecs and his triceps do a lot of work. So bring in the grip a little bit. Okay, puts a little bit of a bigger moment on the shoulder joint, puts a little bit higher demand on the rotator cuff, and this is just stability. If there's anything that Tariq needs to work on, is stability through his shoulder strength. Okay, because he's got the muscle, he's got the pressing power. Now we just need that skill practice, of course, but maybe if we work a little bit more on stability, it can help him with his lift. So the close grip bench allows for that. And then that's it for his secondary day. And that's also progressing from week to week. By the end of the block, he's ending off with 3 sets of 5 at a given percentage. So again, standard way of increasing, dropping the reps slightly, increasing the load. Okay, and obviously the intensity goes up with that. Then his tertiary day, which is basically just a machine press, again a monster set style, 0 acceleration, which I really like, very much bodybuilding style, just simply stimulating the tissue. So we got 50 total reps, an RPE 8 to start off with. I think we're ending with an RPE 10 on this. Yep, RPE 10 at the end of the block. And this is just to get some more stimulus for his pressing power. Honestly, this isn't necessary, but I like to throw it in there for good measure. He's got a tertiary day, and I don't want it to be any sort of heavy bench work. I want to spare his joints because he's already tolerating so much load in the bench twice a week. This third one, I just don't want it to be as crazy. Okay, so we rather want to push some other factors like just direct muscular stimulus. Okay, then for his accessories, pretty much, if you know me, you know that upper body accessories are pretty much there either for growth or for muscular maintenance, or maybe specifically some like kind of isolated inducible stimulus to be able to improve some of the lifts, maybe like upper back training to help the deadlift or squat or bench, really. Maybe some tricep work to help the bench. But other than that, you know, the bicep work, the delt work, I basically just take it from block to block, change up the exercise for novel stimulus, have a very maintenance kind of volume. There's not a lot of that we're doing there, and it's specifically for Tariq. He really does not need any more growth on his upper body, and so his back training, his tricep training, his delt training, his bicep training are all pretty much maintenance. And I just shift around exercises from block to block for novel stimulus, and that's that. He just doesn't want to lose the muscle, and that's the only reason we are throwing in those movements. And for him, just for peace of mind, having that in his program, just he knows that he's working to keep the muscle tissue there. So just some general upper body accessories with the monster set scheme. Yeah, helps with time management as well, I guess. But yeah, that is all of his accessories for his upper body. Just some T-bar rows, chest assisted, katana extensions for his triceps, leaning dumbbell laterals, and dumbbell Y raises for his delts, some cable curls for his biceps, easy bar JM presses for his triceps at a high rep range to make sure we don't tax those elbows. One arm pull downs for the back and the lats, of course, and then some dumbbell spider curls for his biceps. And that's that. That's his entire program. So we're going to see how this goes, see how he ends off this block, and then we're going to take it into the next one. If you've got any feedback, any questions, or anything that you don't understand, please pop it into the comments. That's that for the first video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. It's just taking a little bit of a look of what goes on in here when I set up training for my athletes. This is a very exciting one for Tariq, and I'm excited to see how his prep goes. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.